Terrible HOA story time. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. I live in a middle-class neighborhood that's in a more affluent side of town. The houses all have similar colors and layouts, there's an HOA, and we have a community pool, and so on. I'm currently a college student living with my dad, and I very recently got a new car, a 2008 Nissan Sentra that my uncle used to own. He told me that if I paid to have it transported across the country and paid for whatever needed to be fixed at the mechanic, the car was mine. I agreed, I paid everything, and the car is mine now. I've had it for just under 2 weeks at this point, not counting the time it spent at the auto shop. I mentioned that our neighborhood has an HOA. Well, much like other HOAs, this one has some interesting rules in place. Namely, and this is the rule that affects this post's existence, there is a rule that no cars, absolutely no exceptions, may be parked on the street at any time past 2 a.m. This includes family, friends, and anyone else. If it's there, the car will be towed with zero notice, and it's a $220 fee to pick it up from the towing company that the HOA employs. My dad, several years ago, learned all of this the hard way, as he had to go pay the fee and pick up the car a few months after we moved in, which was in 2012, and he didn't know about that rule yet. Cutting about to 30 minutes ago, I was sitting in my room working on late-night homework, mostly because I'm a master procrastinator, and working at night stimulates my brain, or something. I'd said goodnight to my dad some hours ago, and my younger brother is asleep in the room next to mine. It's his birthday today, so he's back up from university dorm for the weekend. Suddenly, I hear my dad call out something about keeping our dog inside, and then the sound of the front door closing. Curious, I set down my headset, turn on the light in my room, grab my phone, and walk towards the front of the house. The house isn't big, so it takes me less than half a minute to reach the front door. My first thought as I was heading to the door was that, somehow, our dog got loose out of the front. We've had issues with us forgetting to lock or close the door in the past due to us sometimes being a forgetful family, but I was sure there wasn't an issue there. It wasn't until I remembered that my car was parked on the street. Dad had to move it earlier during one of my online classes so that he could take his car out to pick up my brother, and we had forgotten to drive it back up onto the driveway. Therefore, when I open the door, through the darkness, I see the red lights of the tow truck, my precious new car lifted up onto its two back wheels, and my dad standing at the passenger side window trying to plead with the tow truck driver. Panic mode set in for both of us, especially because we didn't want to pay the $220 and have to drive almost all the way across town to pick up the car. The driver, though, gave us an out. If we paid $100 in cash right there on the spot, he would be able to leave the car for us to park in the driveway. An amazing alternative, save for the fact that we didn't have any cash. As such, we had to ask the driver to pretty please move his tow truck a little up the street, allowing my dad and I to hop in his car and drive to the nearest Wells Fargo, which was about a mile away. At this point, it was 2:09, literally only 9 minutes after the tow-away deadline. Clearly these people have better surveillance than the CIA. So I should mention at this point, I was wearing pajamas and had my slippers on, but Dad was still fully clothed. He fell asleep in his clothes like he usually does, but since he had been sleeping and I was still fully awake, we were both in different states of delirium. We drove down the road, probably going 80 in a 45, and turned into the shopping plaza where the Wells Fargo is. My slippers slap onto the asphalt and concrete as I sprint to the ATM, withdraw $100, and run back to the car, where we likely set a new land speed record getting back. When we got home, Dad parked his car while I paid the tow truck driver. Thankfully, he was relatively nice about the ordeal, despite his job description requiring taking my car and set the car back down after taking a few photos, likely for procedural job reasons or whatever. So I was able to park my car on the driveway and then head back inside, where Dad and I were finally able to take a breath of relief, even though I'd lost any semblance of tiredness as well as $100. The silver linings of this story, I suppose, is that my dad sent me $100 soon after through the internet. I told him that it was not necessary, but he insisted, so that part of the story was resolved nicely. At least now I have a cautionary tale to remind myself whenever I park my car on the street for some reason. I mean, it just comes down to like, hey, you gotta remember the rules to park on the street or in the driveway. But you know what? This is a stupid rule in the first place. Like, okay, yeah, remember the rule, but if it's not even there to begin with, you don't have to worry about it. What would have you done? HOA false accusations. So, someone damaged the gate of our community, and there are cameras that I think that are not working. But the HOA manager accused me that, on camera, my vehicle was captured passing the gate. But when I asked for a video surveillance, they refused to show me. I indeed did pass the gate, but the gate was already broken. We have around 5 more vehicles in our community, the same like mine, but the HOA is accusing only me because I have my vehicle painted prime level weeks before. I'm waiting for my appointment to the local shop to do a mat wrap, but they decided that I damaged the gate and painted my car at night in a garage, and then I put my car on my driveway so everyone can see. The metal gate's gone, and to do such damage, the vehicle will probably be totaled. Or someone did it with a chain, but they're supposed to go outside the car. Anyway, the camera's supposed to capture this, and as we later know, the cameras were not working in the whole community. Now, we paid the HOA, but they simply did not put working cameras everywhere. Today, they sent me an invoice for $15,000 to pay for damages that I did not do. They sent me a letter and 3 pictures of the damaged gate taken from the phone. No other evidence, no videos. Wonder what I should do because my wife is going crazy about this bullcrap. I could hire a lawyer, sue the HOA for false accusations, for negligence to maintain security in a community. They wanted money from my insurance company and they wanted to do it silent. So nobody knows, but I'm not going to pay him. Now, the reason they're blaming me is because I have my truck painted in a different color, matte in several spots. I don't know how to call it right, but the shop does it usually before wrapping. I mean priming the car. So I left my truck on my driveway, and the next morning, police drove through the community, and they saw my truck was painted and decided to blame me, like that I did the accident and painted my truck in a garage at night. I have my front cameras on my driveway that shows the different painted spots weeks before the incident. The HOA doesn't have anything against me. I don't know how this idea came up in their heads to blame me without proof. Now, they want a lawsuit or what? Yeah, I mean, if you didn't do it, they don't have proof. I don't know how they're going to stand on those 2 crooked feet that they have. What would you do? Delay my home purchase? Fine. Sell for less than asking price to someone else. 3 years ago, I moved from the East Coast to California. I was fortunate to be moving from a city that was very expensive and super touristy and popular with boomer retirees, so I was able to sell my home for way more than I paid for it. Otherwise, I moved to Cali? No way. This place is expensive, even the Inland Empire, where I was buying a home. My spouse, now ex, and I were working with a fabulous realtor and found several great homes in our price range. Unfortunately, at the beginning of 2021, the city that we were looking in was hot. Every time we made an offer, we were outbid. It was frustrating. However, there was one house that was sitting on the market for a while that my spouse loved. It had some issues, but it was about $300,000 under our max budget, so we could deal with them. I wasn't in love with it, but she was pushing hard for it, so we put in an offer for the house and some of the contents, also for sale, about $10,000 over asking price. Weeks go by. The realtor representing the seller, Mr. DeLay, is asking for proof that we can afford the home. Okay, provided. He wants to know what my job is. Executive. Oh, really? On and on and on. Keeps suggesting that they might get a better offer. Continually suggests that we can't afford a home this nice. Finally, I'm done. A different house that I really wanted falls out of escrow. It's listed for about $110,000 more than the house that we're trying to buy for Mr. DeLay. I offer $55,000 over asking price, contingent on appraisal, duh. Get that house under contract, and my realtor tells Mr. DeLay to pound sand. Mr. DeLay crapped his pants. He blew up my realtor's phone. No. We'll take your offer. Please reconsider. No. My realtor was busting up laughing. She said he was a sexist D-bag and she just loved seeing him squirm. That house ended up selling for $10,000 under asking. I wonder how he explained that to his woman client. Oh, just goes to show you how greed came back to bite him in the butt. He tried to get more and he couldn't. What would have you done to Mr. DeLay? Neighbor is suing for $3,000 for the cost of half of a fence. Our neighbor is suing us for the cost of half of $6,000. When we moved into the house almost 2 years ago, she approached us within the week that we moved in, introducing herself, very friendly, and then proceeded to say she wanted to replace the fence. We let her know that we wouldn't be able to at that time because we had just bought the house and didn't have the extra money. We hadn't talked to her about the fence since then, except one time when my husband repaired the pickets with brand new ones to make sure that our dogs didn't bother her. Her son saw that we were replacing pickets and praised my husband for it, stating that as long as we can just replace pickets as needed, it would save us all money, and we agreed. So fast forward to last summer, our neighbor that we share our back fence with gave us a 3-month notice that she was going to replace the fence entirely due to her huskies getting out all sides of her fencing. So we asked her if she needed us to cover any part so that we could save for it. She let us know that we wouldn't need to pay for it, and then we thanked her. 3 months later, when it was the weekend to replace the fence, our neighbor let us know the day and the hours that the company would come to work and just asked us to let our side neighbors know that construction would be happening, which we did. Upon going to the lady's house on our side and letting her know as a courtesy, she tells us, "Well then, I want to replace my fence as well." So we let her know that we weren't the ones replacing our back fence. She then stated that she didn't care and that she wanted the fence replaced and she was going to have a company come and do it within 2 days, and we would owe her half of a brand new redwood fence that would match the rest of the fencing in her backyard. We shared a cedar fence prior, and we told her that we wouldn't be able to do it on such a short notice and that we weren't going to split the difference for premium materials. She did not listen, and that Saturday, we woke up to someone tearing down our back gate and replacing the fence. They even came to knock on our back door, asking to borrow axes and shovels because they didn't bring any tools. We weren't going to, but she started screaming that we were trying to hinder her fence build, so we let them borrow tools. It took them almost 3 complete days to replace the one side of the fence. They never put our gate back onto the fence because they said they weren't paid to. So my husband had to go buy materials to reattach our gate and to fill in pickets between our gate and the fence. We later received a certified letter stating that we owed her $3,000. We emailed her asking for an itemized receipt that we never received. A month after the fence was installed, we had a lot of rain. The fence started bowing and falling over, and her landscaping company had to fix it. Almost a year later, she is now suing us for half the cost of a fence build. We really don't want to pay for an overpriced fence that we didn't receive adequate notice about and wasn't even installed correctly and could need replacing soon due to how horrible it was completed. Is there any way we can win the lawsuit? Do you agree with this? It basically says you have to put it in writing to make it happen, and it just depends on the laws of the state. If it was falling apart, then you both share responsibility. But I'm saying, like, if it's not, then it is on them. What would you do in this situation? I planted bamboo that overran my neighbor's property over a security light. About 4 years ago, I used to live in a nice HOA in a small town in Texas and enjoyed having only one neighbor over my backyard fence. The plot was about 2 acres, and the other side of the backyard butted up to a hayfield. The stars were beautiful at night because of virtually no light pollution. Until the neighbor decided to install an incredibly bright security light over their back porch, aimed right at my back patio and bedroom windows. I tried to ignore it at first and put shades in the bedroom, but out on the patio, it was like having a bright LED headlight in your face all night. I consulted the HOA about adding a privacy addition to my fence to increase its height, and they said no because it's already at the 8-foot max allowed height. They said there was nothing in the bylaws or whatever about bright lights, so nothing they could do. So I hated for this to be the thing where we finally had a formal greeting after 3 years of back porch waves, but I walked over and rang the doorbell with $20. I politely explained how the light was causing the aforementioned nuisance and asked if there was any way that I could convince him to point the light down or in a different direction, and even offered to buy him a case of beer, the $20, out of goodwill, and even a new motion sensing light. He seemed nice and agreed to point it down. But after waiting a month, nothing changed. I went back to have another polite conversation, and he said that he had changed his mind and was going to leave it on every night and leave it pointed as is. Petty revenge time. Needless to say, I was a bit upset that diplomacy had failed and started figuring out how to win. If the military taught me anything, there's always ways to adapt and overcome. So I started researching fast-growing plants to create big privacy walls and reading through the HOA bylaws and the city and state ordinances about what I could or couldn't plant and if there were any repercussions for encroachment across the property line. I quickly discovered running bamboo, despite being very invasive, would grow super fast to make the neighbor's house and light disappear from view, and there was nothing on the HOA state and city books to prevent me from planting it or cause legal recourse if it spread and grew on his side of the fence. The only thing he could do is cut anything that grew on his side of the line. So I pulled the trigger and planted a bunch of golden bamboo, which grows and spreads crazy fast in Texas and grows up to 20 feet tall. I didn't care if it took over the fence line because his house is 15 feet from the fence while mine was 50 yards away. So I planted a bunch right against the fence and only put root barrier on my side to prevent it spreading into my yard. Within 6 months, his house and light were gone from view, replaced by a pretty bamboo jungle row at the edge of my yard. Within 1 year, he complained that it was growing into his yard via mailed letters, and they went right into the trash with no response. He rang my doorbell once, and I looked at him through the window but just didn't answer the door. I unexpectedly sold my house and moved 2 years after planting for a career opportunity. It's been 2 years since I sold, and I just checked the property on Google Earth, and his entire backyard is bamboo. Well, this is funny. As someone who has dealt with bamboo, this is almost nuclear revenge. And you should mail him a stuffed panda and a flashlight with a card that says, "Thinking of you," unsigned and with no return address. I think this is great because it seems so innocuous and innocent, and then over time, it's one of those ticking time bomb long plays, right? Then OP just takes the win in a creative way that you can't see coming at first. What would have you done? HOA fines me $2,000 every day if I don't stay home. Click the video on your screen so you find out what happens to this crazy HOA, and I'll see you there.